September 1st, 1943. The USS Independence cuts through Pacific waters 230 miles north of the Gilbert Islands. At 0800 hours, Lieutenant Junior Grade Richard Loesch climbs into the cockpit of an aircraft the Japanese Navy has never encountered. The Grumman F6F Hellcat. Dark blue paint gleams under the tropical sun. 6 50 caliber machine guns wait in the wings. A 2,000 horsepower Pratt and Whitney radial engine idles with mechanical precision. Loesch's mission appears routine. Combat air patrol over Baker and Howland Islands. Protection duty for American construction crews building forward airstrips. But when his radar operator calls out a contact at 12,000 feet, everything changes. A massive 4-engine flying boat, Japanese designation H-8K, Allied codename Emily. Loesch rolls into position, lines up his gun sight, and squeezes the trigger. The Emily disintegrates under concentrated 50 caliber fire, burning. Fragments spiral toward the ocean. This single kill, on this single morning, represents more than one pilot's success. It marks the combat debut of the aircraft that will destroy Japanese naval aviation within 18 months. What makes this moment profound is not what happened, but what the Japanese believed about it. Their intelligence officers would examine wreckage, interview survivors, and reach a catastrophic conclusion. The new American fighter appeared outdated, heavy, conventional, nothing revolutionary, nothing to fear. They could not have been more wrong. Within 6 months, the Hellcat will achieve a 19-to-1 kill ratio. Within a year, Japanese pilots will refuse missions when Hellcats are confirmed in the area. The aircraft Tokyo's analysts dismissed as obsolete before it fired a single shot in anger will become the sword that cuts the throat of Japanese air power. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the FLASO time. Comments from where in the world you are watching from today. The irony begins with Japanese confidence. By September 1943, Imperial Navy aviators have ruled Pacific skies for nearly 2 years. The Mitsubishi A6M0 remains the most successful carrier fighter in history. Light, maneuverable, deadly in the hands of veteran pilots who've accumulated hundreds of combat hours since the China campaigns. American F-4F Wildcats could barely compete. Even the new F-4U Corsair, faster and more powerful, carries so many carrier landing problems that the Navy relegates it to Marine squadrons operating from land bases. So when reconnaissance reports in early September 1943 describe a new carrier fighter appearing aboard American flatops, Japanese intelligence officers approach the analysis with established assumptions. American fighters prioritize protection over performance. They sacrifice maneuverability for armor. They build heavy, because American industrial capacity allows waste. The pattern has held true for every American fighter encountered. Why should this new aircraft differ? The preliminary assessment reaches RABAL in mid-September. Intelligence designation pending. Specifications estimated from visual observation and limited combat encounters. Single seat, single engine fighter. Approximate weight, 14,000 pounds fully loaded. Substantially heavier than the Zero's 6,000 pounds. Engine appears to be another American radial, probably similar to units powering the Wildcat. Armament presumably 650 caliber machine guns. Standard American configuration. Performance characteristics unknown, but weight suggests typical American limitations. Poor climbing ability, sluggish maneuverability. The usual American philosophy: protect the pilot, accept reduced performance. The report concludes with fatal confidence. New American fighter represents evolutionary development, not revolutionary change. Tactical response. Requires no doctrinal modifications. Maintain existing combat procedures. Exploit superior zero maneuverability in turning engagements. This assessment travels from RABAL to Truk to Tokyo. Senior commanders read it, nod, file it away. The Americans have introduced another heavy fighter. So what? Japanese pilots have defeated heavy American fighters since Pearl Harbor, but on Guadalcanal, something different is happening. Fighting Squadron 33 arrives in late August with 24 Hellcats and 36 pilots. 12 have previous combat experience. The rest are green, but thoroughly trained. The squadron settles into Henderson Field alongside Marine Corsairs, Army P-38s, and New Zealand Kittyhawks, a multinational fighter force that has been grinding down Japanese air power through attrition warfare. The Wildcats have just rotated home. For 18 months, those stubby fighters held the line against superior Japanese aircraft through pilot skill and tactical innovation. The thatch, weave, boom and zoom attacks. Never turn, Fighter Zero. The lessons came written in American blood. Now the Hellcats will test whether American engineering has learned those lessons too. Lieutenant Commander Paul Buey commands VF-33. He's a realist who understands the tactical equation. Japanese pilots still outperform Americans in traditional dogfighting. The Zero's turn radius remains unmatched. One-on-one, at low speed, a skilled Japanese pilot wins 9 times out of 10. But modern air combat rarely involves one-on-one, low-speed turning battles. It involves formations, teamwork, mutual support, energy management, and increasingly, it involves aircraft that can dictate engagement terms. Buey runs his pilots through familiarization flights. The Hellcat flies nothing like the Wildcat. More power means faster acceleration, higher top speed, better climb rate above 10,000 feet, but it also means more weight to manage. The controls require finesse. The landing approach demands respect. Several pilots ground loop during their first attempts. One aircraft suffers gear damage. The learning curve is steep, but the potential is obvious. On September 6, 1943, the Hellcat draws first blood against Japanese fighters. VF-33 escorts TBF torpedo bombers and P-39 fighters, attacking a suspected radar installation on Morgusaya Island in the Shortland Group. 9 Zeros climb to intercept. Ensign James Warren spots them first. He positions for a diving attack, rolls in, fires a burst from 6,000 feet. The Zero smokes, but doesn't burn. Warren pulls up, unsure if he scored. The engagement breaks up in confusion. Multiple aircraft maneuvering, tracers crossing empty sky. Then, silence. Warren doesn't claim a kill. He didn't witness the results. But intelligence later confirms a Zero went down near the engagement coordinates. Warren receives credit for the first Hellcat kill against Japanese fighters. The claim proves controversial. Post-war analysis suggests the Zero may have crashed for different reasons. Navigation error, fuel exhaustion. The chaos of combat makes certainty impossible. But it doesn't matter. What matters is that Hellcats and Zeros have met, and the Hellcat survived. 3 days later, on September 9th, Ensign Harry Cantrell earns the first confirmed Hellcat victory over a Zero. Fighter sweep over Balale and Faro Islands. Cantrell encounters Warrant Officer Tsukasa Kondo of Air Group 201. The engagement lasts perhaps 30 seconds. Cantrell uses speed and diving attacks. Kondo attempts to force a turning fight. The Hellcat's power overwhelms the Zero's agility. 650 caliber guns converge. Kondo's aircraft disintegrates. He dies without understanding what killed him. The pattern is established. Not domination, not yet, but parity. American pilots in Hellcats can engage Zeros without the desperate defensive tactics Wildcat pilots required. They can attack, press, force engagements on favorable terms. The psychological shift is immediate. Marine pilots who've spent months looking over their shoulders suddenly fly with confidence. The playing field isn't level, but it's no longer tilted impossibly against them. Japanese pilots notice the difference too. Veteran pilot Lieutenant Junichi Sasai commands the Tainan Air Group operating from Rabaul. His pilots have years of experience. They've mastered the Zero. They understand its advantages and limitations. When they encounter the new American fighter over the Solomons in September, their after-action reports reveal confusion. The new fighter climbs well. Not better than the Zero below 14,000 feet, but competitive. At altitude, it may climb slightly better. This contradicts expectations about heavy American fighters. The new fighter also dives exceptionally well, faster than the Zero can safely follow. Again, this aligns with previous American fighters, but the margin seems greater. Most troubling, The new fighter absorbs damage that would destroy a Zero. Multiple pilots report hitting the American fighter with cannon fire, watching shells impact wings and fuselage, seeing no apparent effect. The American continues fighting, escapes, returns to base. This troubles Sasai. Japanese tactical doctrine emphasizes offensive action. Strike first, strike hard, kill quickly. But what happens when the enemy refuses to die? When your cannons hit home and the target keeps flying? The Zero's 20mm cannons carry only 60 rounds, enough for perhaps 6 sustained bursts. If those bursts fail to destroy the target, the Zero transitions to 7.7mm machine guns, and those machine guns, effective against unarmored aircraft, bounce harmlessly off American armor plate. Sasai's report travels up the command chain. New American fighter demonstrates unexpected performance characteristics. Recommended tactical response: maintain altitude, advantage, strike from above, disengage before turning combat develops. Use superior climbing ability below 14,000 feet to regain altitude after each attack. Exploit Zero maneuverability only when absolutely necessary. The recommendation acknowledges reality. The Hellcat has changed the calculus, not revolutionized it, changed it. Japanese pilots must adapt. They must fight smarter. Use their advantages more carefully. This should be possible. Japanese naval aviation has adapted before. After Midway, after Guadalcanal, after a dozen smaller setbacks, they will adapt again. Except this time, adaptation won't be enough, because while Japanese pilots are learning to respect the Hellcat, they're still fundamentally misunderstanding what it represents. They see an improved American fighter, better than the Wildcat, perhaps equivalent to the Zero in certain parameters. They don't see the systematic revolution in naval fighter design that Grumman has created. The Hellcat isn't just a better fighter. It's a different philosophy of air combat made metal. Every design decision reflects lessons learned from 2 years of desperate fighting. The 200-pound armor package protects the pilot, engine, and fuel system. Not perfectly, but enough to survive hits that would kill a Zero pilot instantly. The self-sealing fuel tanks use multiple layers of rubber that expand when punctured. Fuel leaks become trickles instead of fountains. Fires become rare instead of inevitable. The 650 caliber Browning machine guns represent overwhelming firepower advantage. Each gun fires 850 rounds per minute. Combined rate of fire over 100 rounds per second. 400 rounds per gun gives 30 seconds of sustained fire. No need to conserve ammunition, no need to wait for perfect shot angles. American pilots can fire long bursts, walk their tracers into the target, overwhelm enemy aircraft with sheer volume. Compare this to Zero armament. 2 20mm cannons with 60 rounds each. Approximately 6 seconds of cannon fire total. 2 7.7mm machine guns with 700 rounds each. Perhaps 1 minute of machine gun fire. But those machine guns lack stopping power against armored targets. So effectively, a Zero pilot has 6 seconds to kill his opponent with cannon fire. After that, he's fighting with weapons that can't penetrate American armor. The mathematics of attrition favor Americans, dramatically. Every engagement, where a Hellcat and Zero trade, shots favors the Hellcat. More ammunition, better protection, higher survival rate. These advantages compound over time. American pilots learn from mistakes and return to combat. Japanese pilots make one mistake and die. The veteran advantage that carried Japanese naval aviation through 1941 and 1942 is bleeding away. And the Hellcat is the knife. But Tokyo doesn't see this yet. The September reports from Rabaul describe a competitive American fighter. Nothing revolutionary. Tactical adaptations will suffice. This assessment travels through the bureaucracy. Intelligence officers analyze it, compare it to specifications of other American fighters. The Hellcat appears to be a scaled-up Wildcat, heavier, more powerful, but fundamentally similar. The conclusion: maintain current training procedures, refine tactics slightly, continue producing Zeros. No crisis, no emergency, business as usual. This complacency is Japan's death sentence, because while Tokyo analyzes reports and maintains status quo, Grumman is producing Hellcats at unprecedented rates, 500 per month by October 1943, one aircraft every 90 minutes. Assembly lines at Bethpage, New York, operate around the clock. Workers who've never built aircraft before master the techniques. The production philosophy mirrors the aircraft design: simple, robust, maintainable. No exotic materials, no complex sub-assemblies, just solid engineering produced at industrial scale. And those Hellcats pour into the Pacific. USS Essex receives its air group in March 1943, first combat in September. By November, 4 more Essex-class carriers join the fleet, each carrying 90 aircraft, including fighters. The math is brutal. Each carrier fields 36 Hellcats. 5 carriers mean 180 Hellcats. Japan's entire carrier force at this point carries perhaps 200 Zeros across all their remaining flat tops. And American production is accelerating while Japanese production struggles under resource shortages and Allied submarine attacks. November 5, 1943. The combat equation crystallizes over Rabaul. Admiral William Halsey launches a massive carrier strike against the Japanese stronghold. Task Force 38 includes carriers Saratoga and Princeton. 97 aircraft participate, 33 Hellcats, 16 TBF Avengers, 22 SBD Dauntlesses. The target, Simpson Harbor and the assembled Japanese fleet. The Hellcats arrive first at 0900 hours, fighter sweep to suppress air defenses. They encounter fierce opposition. Zeros climb from 5 airfields, experienced pilots, men who've survived Guadalcanal, Coral Sea, Eastern Solomons. They know their business. They expect to massacre American fighters in a turning battle over their home base. Instead, they encounter systematic destruction. The Hellcats refuse to turn fight. They maintain speed, use diving attacks, work in pairs. When Zeros attempt to force turning engagements, Hellcats simply extend away, climb back to altitude, attack again. The Japanese pilots grow increasingly desperate. They burn through their limited cannon ammunition trying to hit targets that won't slow down, won't turn predictably, won't die when hit. The engagement devolves into chaos. Zeros spinning, burning, falling, Hellcats diving through formations, firing, climbing away untouched. By the end of the hour, American pilots claim 137 kills. Exaggerated, certainly. Gun camera footage and Japanese records later suggest actual losses around 40 aircraft. But even 40 aircraft represents catastrophic attrition for the Japanese. Experienced pilots killed, irreplaceable expertise lost. And the American losses? 6 TBFs, 8 Hellcats. Not one American ship suffered damage. The strike achieved complete success. The combat debut Rabaul's veterans feared most had arrived. If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this. 2 days later, Admiral Halsey orders another strike. This time, land-based aircraft join the carrier planes. 74 fighters, including Hellcats and Corsairs, sweep over Rabaul. Japanese defenders scramble everything available. 50 Zeros engage. The pattern repeats. American fighters work in coordinated formations. Hellcats provide high cover. Corsairs hit medium altitude. The Zeros find themselves overwhelmed by superior numbers, superior tactics, and increasingly, superior aircraft. This engagement produces the first large-scale recognition of Hellcat superiority. VF-9 claims 55 victories, an all-time record for a Navy squadron in a single mission. VF-18 claims 38 more. The numbers are inflated, but the trend is unmistakable. American fighters are achieving multiple kills per engagement. Japanese losses cannot be sustained. After this strike, Japanese carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku withdraw their air groups from Rabaul back to Truk. Fresh units transfer from the Marshall Islands to replace them. The withdrawal acknowledges reality. Veteran carrier air groups are being destroyed faster than they can kill Americans. November 20th, 1943. Operation Galvanic begins. American invasion of the Gilbert Islands. Tarawa and Makin become the first Central Pacific. Atolls targeted in the island hopping campaign. Carrier Task Force 50 covers the landings. 11 carriers, including 6 Essex-class flat tops, over 400 aircraft. The Japanese garrison prepares for the assault with grim determination. They understand American air superiority will be total. Their only hope lies in devastating the landing forces before air power can intervene. Over Tarawa, on November 23rd and 24th, Hellcats engage Japanese aircraft in the war's first large-scale Central Pacific air battle. 30 Zeros scramble from Tarawa's airfield. They climb toward the American formation with desperate courage. The pilots know they're outmatched, outnumbered, flying obsolete aircraft against superior enemies. They attack anyway, because that's what Japanese naval aviators do. Attack, always attack. Even when attack means death, the Hellcats destroy 30 Zeros for the loss of 1 F6F, 30-1. The kill ratio isn't just lopsided, it's annihilation. American pilots later described the engagement with something approaching pity. The Japanese flew bravely. They maneuvered aggressively. They pressed attacks despite overwhelming odds. But brave men in obsolete aircraft cannot defeat superior technology and tactics. The mathematics of air combat had shifted beyond courage's ability to compensate. One veteran Japanese pilot survives the Tarawa engagement. Warrant Officer Hiroshi Tanaka. He limps back to his base with his Zero shot full of holes, engine streaming oil, fuel tanks nearly dry. His after-action report reveals the psychological impact of facing Hellcats. Quote, "The new American fighter completely dominates the combat environment. We cannot turn with it at high speed. We cannot dive away from it. We cannot outclimb it above 4,000 meters. When we hit it with cannon fire, it continues fighting. When it hits us, we die. Our training taught us that superior spirit and skill defeat material advantage. This belief is false. The Americans possess both material advantage and skill. We are dying without purpose." End quote. Tanaka's report travels up the chain of command. It reaches Tokyo in early December. Intelligence officers read it. Compare it to earlier assessments. The disparity is striking. September reports suggested a competitive American fighter. November reports describe systematic slaughter. Something fundamental has changed. But what? Is the Hellcat that much better than initial assessments suggested? Or have Japanese pilot skills declined so dramatically that even a moderate American fighter dominates? The answer is both. The Hellcat is significantly better than early reports indicated. But Japanese pilot quality is also cratering. The 1943 training program produces replacement pilots with 200 hours total flight time. Compare this to American pilots receiving 500 hours. Japanese pilots spend minimal time on gunnery training. Ammunition shortages limit live fire practice. Many new pilots never fire at a moving aerial target before their first combat mission. American pilots, by contrast, spend 50 hours on gunnery alone. Camera guns record their practice. Instructors analyze performance. Mistakes are corrected before combat. The compound effect creates a widening gap. Better aircraft, better training, better tactics, better everything. And the gap widens every month as American production accelerates while Japanese resources contract. By December 1943, American factories are producing 5 Hellcats for every 0 Japan manufactures. By January 1944, the ratio hits 6-1. By February, 7-1. The numbers tell a story Tokyo cannot acknowledge. Japan is losing the production war, losing the training war, and now, definitively, losing the aircraft war. The psychological impact on Japanese naval aviation cannot be overstated. Pilots who once ruled Pacific skies now fear every mission. Veterans watch replacement pilots die on their first combat flight. Squadron cohesion disintegrates as experienced leaders fall, and green replacements cannot fill the gaps. Maintenance crews watch planes depart and never return. The atmosphere in Japanese air groups shifts from confidence to desperation to fatalism. They will fight. They will die, but they cannot win. December 1943 brings Christmas to American carrier groups operating near the Marshall Islands. On deck, sailors celebrate with improvised decorations and special meals. In ready rooms, pilots relax between missions, writing letters home, playing cards, discussing tactics. The mood is cautiously optimistic. The Navy has turned the corner. The defensive fighting of 1942 has given way to offensive operations in 1943. Carriers that once retreated from Japanese threats now hunt those threats aggressively. And in every ready room, Hellcat pilots understand what their aircraft represents. Freedom. The freedom to engage without desperate defensive maneuvering. The freedom to press attacks knowing their aircraft can survive battle damage. The freedom to make mistakes without dying. This psychological advantage compounds the technical advantages. American pilots fight with confidence. Japanese pilots fight with fear. Confidence wins. Lieutenant Eugene Valencia flies his Hellcat off USS Essex in February 1944. Target: Truk Atoll, Japan's Gibraltar of the Pacific. The massive naval base houses the combined fleet's remaining strength, hundreds of aircraft, dozens of ships, fuel depots, ammunition bunkers, repair facilities. Truk represents Japanese naval power in the Central Pacific. Admiral Raymond Spruance intends to eliminate it. Valencia's division encounters Zeros at 18,000 feet, 6 Japanese fighters diving from altitude. The attack pattern is aggressive, coordinated, professional. These aren't replacement pilots with 200 hours. These are veterans, men who understand energy management, deflection, shooting, mutual support. They execute a textbook bounce, coming out of the sun with speed advantage. Valencia rolls into the attack. His wingmen follow. The Hellcat formation doesn't break, doesn't scatter, doesn't retreat. Instead, they turn into the threat. 6 Hellcats meeting 6 Zeros head-on. The geometry of aerial combat reduces to simple mathematics. Who fires first? Who has more firepower? Who can survive the collision of intent? Valencia's 650 caliber guns roar. Tracers converge on the lead Zero. The Japanese fighter's engine explodes. Wings separate. The aircraft tumbles earthward, trailing flame and debris. Valencia doesn't watch it fall. He's already transitioning to the next target, a Zero attempting to get on his wingman's tail. Valencia pulls lead, fires a 2-second burst. The Zero's canopy shatters. The pilot slumps forward. The aircraft enters an uncontrolled dive. The engagement lasts perhaps 90 seconds. 3 Zeros destroyed. The remaining 3 disengage, diving for cloud cover. Valencia's division suffers no losses, not one aircraft hit. This is what air superiority looks like, not close-fought battles where both sides bleed, one-sided engagements where Americans kill without dying. Valencia returns to Essex with bullet holes in his wing. 5 hits, none critical. Maintenance crews patch the damage in 3 hours. The Hellcat launches again that afternoon. Same pilot, same aircraft, different targets. The industrial logic of American air power. Aircraft tough enough to fly multiple missions per day. Production capacity to replace losses overnight. Training pipeline producing pilots faster than combat consumes them. Japan cannot compete with this system, cannot even comprehend it. The Truk strike destroys over 200 Japanese aircraft, some in aerial combat, most on the ground. American fighters sweep the airfields at low altitude, strafing parked planes, igniting fuel dumps, cratering runways. The Japanese defenders fight desperately. Anti-aircraft fire fills the sky. Zeros scramble continuously throughout the day. Nothing stops the American juggernaut. By nightfall, Truk's air power is broken. The base remains operational, but its offensive capability has been gutted. Captain Minoru Genda observes the Truk disaster from Tokyo. He designed the Pearl Harbor attack. He understands carrier aviation better than almost anyone in the Japanese Navy. His assessment of the Hellcat is brutally honest. Quote, "We trained for 20 years to fight a war that no longer exists. The Americans changed the rules. They built a superior aircraft and trained superior pilots to fly it. Our tactical doctrine assumed we could force turning engagements where zero maneuverability would prevail. The Hellcat refuses these engagements. It fights only on favorable terms. We cannot catch it. We cannot escape it. We can only die against it." End quote. Genda's report circulates among senior commanders. Some dismiss it as defeatism. Others recognize the truth but cannot acknowledge it publicly. The Japanese military culture forbids admission of fundamental inferiority. Spirit must triumph over matter. Determination must overcome technological disadvantage. To suggest otherwise is to betray the warrior code. So official reports continue describing the Hellcat as merely another American fighter, competitive but not dominant, beatable through superior tactics and courage. This cognitive dissonance between reality and official doctrine creates paralysis. No fundamental changes to training, no crash program to develop a zero replacement, no tactical revolution to counter American advantages, just incremental modifications to a failing system, more armor added to zeros, reducing maneuverability without significantly improving survival. Replacement pilots rushed through shorter training programs, reducing quality to increase quantity. Forward bases fortified with more anti-aircraft guns, making them harder to destroy but not preventing their isolation. Meanwhile, American carrier operations intensify. By March 1944, 12 Essex-class carriers operate in the Pacific. Each carries 36 Hellcats. That's over 400 Hellcats concentrated in fast carrier task forces. Add land-based Hellcat squadrons in the Solomons and Central Pacific. Add Corsairs operating from marine bases. The aerial armada dwarfs anything Japan can field, and it's growing exponentially while Japanese air power contracts. March 19, 1944. Lieutenant Alexander Vrasiu flies his 21st combat mission off USS Intrepid. His squadron intercepts a Japanese bombing raid targeting American positions on Manus Island. 15 Betty bombers escorted by 20 Zeros. The Japanese formation maintains tight discipline. Bombers in a defensive box, fighters weaving above and beside. They've learned that dispersed formations get destroyed piecemeal. Concentration offers survival. Vrasiu leads his division into the attack from above. 8 Hellcats against 35 Japanese aircraft. The numbers should favor the Japanese. They don't. The Hellcats slash through the formation in diving passes. 6 50 caliber guns converge on bombers and fighters alike. The Betty bombers, flying fuel tanks with minimal armor, explode under concentrated fire. 3 destroyed in the first pass, 4 more on the second. The Zeros attempt to defend their charges, but they can't keep pace with Hellcats diving at 450 miles per hour. The engagement ends with 12 Japanese aircraft destroyed. No American losses. Vrasiu himself accounts for 4 kills. His gun camera footage shows the systematic execution of enemy aircraft. Line up, fire, target disintegrates, move to next target, no wasted ammunition, no missed shots, every burst finds its mark. This is what 500 hours of training produces. Pilots who shoot with machine precision. Japanese survivors limp back to Truk with catastrophic losses. The bomber formation commander's report describes the encounter with clinical horror. Quote, "American fighters attacked with unprecedented aggression and firepower. Our escort proved ineffective. The new American aircraft possesses speed and armament advantages we cannot overcome. Recommend suspension of daylight bombing operations until air superiority can be re-established." End quote. The recommendation is rejected. Japan cannot suspend offensive operations. To do so acknowledges defeat. Instead, bomber raids continue, and continue to be slaughtered. By April 1944, Japanese naval aviation in the Central Pacific ceases meaningful offensive operations. Too few aircraft, too few experienced pilots, too little fuel. The attrition has become unsustainable. Admiral Jisaburo Ozawa, commanding the mobile fleet, recognizes the crisis. His carriers sail, with half their normal aircraft complement. The pilots filling those complements average 100 hours total flight time. 100 hours. Compare this to Vrasiu, with hundreds of combat hours alone. Compare this to American replacement pilots arriving with 500 hours. The qualitative gap has become a chasm, and Ozawa knows what happens when his forces meet American carriers in battle. The Philippine Sea awaits. The Great Marianas Turkey shoot. But that's June. This is March, and March brings its own revelations. The kill ratio statistics tell the story. September 1943 through March 1944. 6 months. The Hellcat's first half-year of combat operations. American pilots claim over 1,500 Japanese aircraft destroyed. Actual Japanese losses probably closer to 1,000. Still staggering. American losses in the same period, fewer than 100 Hellcats to all causes. The kill ratio fluctuates between 10 to 1 and 20 to 1, depending on the engagement. Averaged across 6 months, 19 to 1. 19 Japanese aircraft destroyed for every Hellcat lost. This ratio represents more than superior technology. It represents systematic dominance. Industrial capacity producing aircraft faster than combat destroys them. Training programs graduating pilots faster than attrition depletes them. Tactical doctrine emphasizing survival and mutual support rather than individual heroics. Logistical networks maintaining operational readiness rates above 90%, every element of the system optimized for sustained combat operations. Japan possesses none of these advantages, cannot develop them, cannot even conceive of the organizational changes required. The Japanese system produces elite warriors through brutal selection and years of training. Beautiful, admirable, completely unsuited for industrial age warfare. When those elite warriors die, and they die by the hundreds in early 1944, the system cannot replace them with equally skilled successors. It can only produce half-trained teenagers and send them to die against American pilots who've spent 18 months learning their craft. The human cost crystallizes in the stories of replacement pilots. Ensign Takeshi Yamamoto arrives at Truk in February 1944, 20 years old, 90 hours total flight time. 2 weeks earlier, he was in training school, learning basic formation flying. Now he sits in a ready room receiving his combat briefing. Escort mission to Manus Island. The same raid Vrachu will decimate. Yamamoto listens to the briefing with growing dread. He's seen veterans return from combat, watched their hands shake during debriefs, heard them describe the new American fighter that kills with mechanical efficiency. Yamamoto doesn't survive his first mission. His Zero takes 650 caliber rounds in the engine during the initial American attack. The engine seizes, flames erupt. He bails out at 8,000 feet, parachute deploying cleanly. He floats down toward the ocean, watching his squadron mates die around him. Zeros burning, spinning, exploding. The entire engagement takes less than 5 minutes. A Japanese Navy destroyer rescues him hours later. He returns to duty 2 weeks later. Flies 3 more missions, dies on the 4th when Vrakyu's wingman shoots him down over the same stretch of ocean. Yamamoto represents thousands of replacement pilots fed into the meat grinder of air combat in early 1944. Young men with minimal training sent to die against experienced American pilots in superior aircraft. The tragedy isn't their courage. They fight bravely. The tragedy is their sacrifice achieves nothing. They don't slow the American advance. Don't inflict proportional casualties. Don't buy time for Japan to develop countermeasures. They just die. And their deaths become statistical entries in reports that flow to Tokyo and get filed away. The psychological impact on remaining Japanese veterans becomes severe. Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, Japan's greatest surviving ace, flies combat missions through early 1944 with increasing desperation. He understands what's happening, has understood since Guadalcanal. Japanese naval aviation is dying, not from lack of courage, from lack of resources, training time, industrial capacity, all the intangibles that determine modern war's outcome. Sakai's diary entries from March 1944 reveal his state of mind. Quote, "Today I watched 16 of our fighters engage 8 American Hellcats. Within minutes, 9 of ours were falling in flames. The survivors fled. I did not attempt to help. What could one more Zero accomplish? The war in the air is lost. We are already dead. Our bodies simply haven't realized it yet." End quote. This nihilism spreads through Japanese fighter squadrons. Pilots who once competed for the honor of leading attacks now dread the selection. Maintenance crews prepare aircraft knowing many won't return. Squadron commanders write letters of condolence, knowing they'll soon follow their pilots into death. The institutional collapse of Japanese naval aviation begins not in June at the Philippine Sea, but in these months, September through March. The Hellcat's first 6 months, and yet Tokyo's official assessment of the Hellcat remains unchanged. Intelligence reports from March 1944 still describe it as a conventional American fighter, heavy, adequately armed, competently flown. Nothing revolutionary. The reports acknowledge high loss rates among Japanese pilots, but attribute this to inferior replacement pilot quality rather than fundamental aircraft inferiority. The logic is circular and comforting. We're losing because our new pilots are poorly trained. Therefore, we need to train them better. Therefore, the problem is solvable through traditional means. This delusion persists even as the evidence mounts. Gun camera footage from captured American aircraft shows Hellcats destroying Zeros with contemptuous ease. Survivor testimonies describe an aircraft that dominates in every performance parameter except low-speed turning. Technical intelligence from the captured Hellcat on Formosa in January 1945 finally reveals the engineering sophistication. But by then, it's too late. The damage is done. Japanese naval aviation has been bled white. The final irony crystallizes in April 1944. American codebreakers intercept Japanese communications, discussing the upcoming Eigo operation, Japan's last chance to achieve a decisive carrier battle. Admiral Ozawa will sortie with 9 carriers and over 400 aircraft. He will engage the American carrier force advancing toward the Marianas. He will achieve victory through superior tactics and the warrior spirit of Japanese naval aviators. The plan assumes Japanese pilots can compete effectively against American pilots in aircraft versus aircraft combat. This assumption is fantasy. Has been fantasy since November 1943. Will be proven fantasy in devastating fashion at the Philippine Sea in June. But in April, planning staffs in Tokyo genuinely believe Japanese naval aviation can still win a carrier battle. They've read the intelligence reports describing the Hellcat as merely another American fighter. They've accepted the explanations attributing high losses to pilot quality rather than aircraft inferiority. They've convinced themselves that better tactics and stronger determination can overcome material disadvantages. They're wrong, catastrophically wrong. The Hellcat has already won the war in the air. The actual fighting in June will simply confirm what September through March demonstrated. American naval aviation has achieved absolute superiority, not through individual heroics or tactical brilliance, though both exist, through systematic application of industrial and technological advantages. Better aircraft, better training, better logistics, better everything, and the margin of superiority is so wide that Japanese courage cannot bridge it. The statistics from the Hellcat's first 6 months tell the complete story. September 1943, first combat kill. October, increasing operational tempo. November, Rabaul strikes demonstrate tactical dominance. December, attrition warfare favors Americans decisively. January, Japanese replacement pilot quality collapse. February, Truk strike eliminates major forward base. March, Japanese offensive operations cease. 6 months. From introduction to total air superiority, no other aircraft in history achieved this impact this quickly. 307 American pilots become aces flying the Hellcat. 67 achieve ace status in the first 6 months alone. Commander David McCampbell, the Navy's top ace, begins his killing spree in May 1944. He'll eventually score 34 victories. But dozens of pilots achieve ace status before McCampbell even enters combat. The Hellcat makes aces of average pilots because the aircraft is that good. Because the American system is that good. Because Japanese opposition by early 1944 has degraded so severely that even moderately skilled American pilots can dominate. This isn't to diminish American pilot skill. They're well trained, disciplined, professional. But the system deserves credit. the training program that gives them 500 hours, the maintenance crews that keep aircraft operational, the logistical networks that deliver fuel, ammunition, spare parts. The industrial base that produces Hellcats faster than Japanese factories produce Zeros. The intelligence services that provide targeting information. The code breakers who reveal enemy plans. Every element working together to create overwhelming combat power. Japan possesses no equivalent system, cannot build one. The Zaibatsu industrial conglomerates lack American production capacity. The training programs cannot expand without fuel for practice flights. The maintenance networks lack spare parts because submarines sink supply ships. The tactical doctrine emphasizes individual skill over systematic efficiency. Every element of Japanese military culture and industrial capacity is optimized for the wrong kind of war. They prepared for a short, decisive conflict. They're fighting a long war of industrial attrition. And they're losing. The human dimension of this loss cannot be captured in statistics. Every destroyed Zero represents a dead or wounded pilot. Every destroyed bomber represents 6 to 8 dead crewmen. Every Japanese aircraft that fails to return creates a hole in squadron rosters that cannot be filled with equally skilled replacements. By March 1944, entire Japanese air groups exist only on paper. The roster shows 30 aircraft and 40 pilots. Reality shows 12 operational aircraft and 15 pilots capable of flying them. The rest are replacements with minimal training, waiting for their turn to die. American pilots develop complex feelings about this slaughter. Early engagements produce exhilaration. They're winning. Their aircraft works. Their training pays off. But by March, the victories feel hollow. Shooting down poorly trained Japanese pilots in obsolete aircraft isn't sport, it's execution. Some American pilots feel guilty, others simply feel tired. The killing becomes mechanical. Target appears, gun sight tracks, trigger pressed, target destroyed. Repeat. The emotional toll of killing defenseless opponents differs from the toll of even combat, but it's real. Lieutenant Junior Grade Byron Johnson, rescued from his burning Hellcat on Enterprise's deck in November 1943, returns to combat in January 1944. He shoots down 8 Japanese aircraft over Iwo Jima in February 1945. His post-war interviews reveal conflicted feelings about the victories. Quote, "They were brave men flying inferior aircraft with inadequate training. They attacked knowing they'd probably die. That kind of courage deserves respect. But war doesn't care about respect. War cares about winning. And we won because our aircraft, our training, our system was better. I'm proud of my service, but I'm not proud of how easy it became." End quote. This is the profound irony at the heart of the Hellcat's first 6 months. The aircraft Japanese intelligence dismissed as conventional and unthreatening became the weapon that destroyed Japanese naval aviation, not through revolutionary design or radical innovation, through systematic application of hard-won lessons, through engineering that prioritized pilot survival and maintainability, through production capacity that delivered aircraft in overwhelming numbers, through training that produced competent pilots at industrial scale. The Japanese assessment of the Hellcat as outdated was technically correct in one sense. The aircraft incorporated no revolutionary technologies, no jet engines, no swept wings, no guided missiles. Just a conventional piston engine fighter with good design and excellent execution. But that conventional fighter, produced in vast numbers and flown by well-trained pilots, achieved what revolutionary technologies often fail to achieve: decisive victory. By April 1944, the outcome of the Pacific Air War is determined. Japan will continue fighting for 16 more months, will develop new aircraft like the George and Jack fighters, will introduce kamikaze tactics, will inflict casualties on American forces. But none of this changes the fundamental reality established in the Hellcat's first 6 months. American naval aviation has achieved permanent superiority. The industrial and training advantages that produced this superiority continue widening. Every month, American forces grow stronger while Japanese forces weaken. Admiral Chester Nimitz, reviewing operational reports in April, understands this. His planning staff projects the invasion of the Marianas for June, then the Philippines for October, then Okinawa for April 1945. The timetable depends on maintaining air superiority. The Hellcat has delivered that superiority, will continue delivering it. The Pacific War's outcome is no longer in doubt. Only the timeline and cost remain uncertain. Emperor Hirohito, in his post-war memoirs, identifies 3 factors that made Japan's defeat inevitable: American industrial capacity, the atomic bomb, and the Hellcat fighter. Quote, "When our pilots could no longer contest the skies, our islands became indefensible. The Hellcat was the sword that cut the empire's lifeline." End quote. This from the Emperor of Japan. The man who saw all intelligence reports, heard all assessments, understood the strategic picture completely. He recognized what Tokyo intelligence failed to acknowledge in September 1943. The Hellcat was not just another American fighter. It was the weapon that would destroy Japanese naval aviation. The 6 months from September 1943 to March 1944 represent one of the most decisive periods in aviation history, not because of spectacular battles, though those occurred, not because of revolutionary technology, though the Hellcat was excellent, but because of systematic application of industrial-age warfare principles. Build better equipment, train operators thoroughly, produce in overwhelming quantities, maintain relentlessly, support logistically. These unglamorous factors determined the outcome more than any dramatic dogfight. Japanese naval aviation began the war with the finest carrier pilots in the world, men who'd trained for years, accumulated hundreds of combat hours, mastered their aircraft completely. They achieved stunning victories at Pearl Harbor, Darwin, the Indian Ocean. They dominated Pacific skies through mid-1942. Then they met an enemy with greater industrial capacity, an enemy willing to learn from defeats, an enemy who built aircraft specifically to counter zero advantages while maximizing pilot survival. The Hellcat embodies this approach. Not the fastest fighter. The Corsair was faster, not the most maneuverable. The Zero retained turning advantages, not the most heavily armed. Some fighters mounted cannons. But the Hellcat balanced all qualities optimally for carrier operations. Fast enough, maneuverable enough, armed well, protected adequately, reliable, maintainable, producible. These prosaic qualities mattered more than any single spectacular characteristic. Thank you for watching. For more detailed historical breakdowns, check out the other videos on your screen now and don't forget to subscribe.